Our next presenter is Nicole Dunn. She's a senior project consultant with Thomas P. Miller and Associates, which is a strategy firm based in Indianapolis. She was also a research coordinator with Indy Partnership, Central Indiana's economic development organization, where her work on a labor study won a 2011 award for excellence in research supporting economic development. She's very smart, folks. She's very smart. She's also married to a third grade teacher who is blessed with patience and a good sense of humor, which we all wish we could be blessed with as well. Everyone, please welcome Nicole.
All right, well, thank you again. I'm Nicole Dunn. I'm a senior project consultant with Thomas P. Miller and Associates, and we are a workforce and economic development strategy firm headquartered in Indianapolis with offices in Youngstown. And I'm going to talk to you about how I like to use data to target industries. So it's after 4, and I just said data. Saw some eyes glaze over. Somebody thinks it might be a good time to take a bathroom break, but I promise I'll leave you with a couple useful tips, and I'll try not to be this guy and bore you to death with a whole bunch of charts and graphs. But at TPMA, we think industry cluster approaches are great because they help you really focus on key industries where workforce systems can be most effective. And we think this approach can help you be a lot more demand-driven and have maximum impact on your customers and your employers. The state of Michigan's built a lot of flexibility in with which industries you can target, but with so many to choose from, how do you navigate your options? So we recommend looking at data points for 4 types of industries to narrow your focus and help you make resource decisions. So first is the industry with local competitive advantages. And this might be the most obvious. Usually it's a well-established, visible industry with high employment and a lot of history in the region. So you might think manufacturing, healthcare, maybe tourism or agriculture for a lot of you. But it might be a little less obvious. So rather than sheer employment size, you can look for areas where your region has a high relative concentration of workers in a certain industry. It's called location quotient, and a high LQ likely means you have an economic advantage. So in St. Louis, for example, the IT industry is way down on the list for total employment, but concentration is 2 times the national average, and the industry pays really well. So this could be a great target industry for St. Louis, and almost certainly you have an example of this in your region as well. So the second is the smaller but rapidly growing industry. This is going to be an emerging industry. It could be a result of new technology or trends. It might even be a spin-off from another big industry that's expanding into another line of business. So there are a few key indicators to help you recognize it. You want to pay attention to expansions, to big changes in hiring, trends in the media. You can look at real-time labor market information from sources like Monster or Burning Glass. It talks about job postings and the companies that are posting them. So in Kokomo, Indiana, you all might know it as the heart of Indiana's auto manufacturing, but employment in nursing and residential care grew 83% over the recession. So this deserves some attention from their workforce agency to help continue this growth. So third is the large but declining industry, and unfortunately this is often but not always a manufacturing cluster. But there's opportunity here to both address workforce needs and with good partnerships to alert economic development and maybe help stem the tide of job loss. So the big indicators here are employment size and employment decline. So you want to look at a relatively large portion of total jobs, but ones that have taken a hit in recent years. So you can look at historical employment, but also hopefully projections if you have access to good ones. And if you want to get really fancy, you can look at something called shift share through proprietary tools like MZ Analyst, and there are some public ones out there as well. And they tell you what portion of job growth and job loss are due to local factors and what portion is due to national factors and trends. So in Kansas City, transportation and warehousing dropped 4% in 5 years, even though it grew statewide and it grew nationally. And shift share tells us that all of that decline was due to local factors. What's going on in Kansas City? They need to target the industry and find out. So finally is the industry with the employer champion. And this is your low-hanging fruit. So if you've got a few employers who really care and are really excited about what you're doing, that's a good place to start. They can rally other employers and get them involved. But how do you know? Well, I know I promised to talk to you about data, but in this case, it's based more on relationships and on intuition and on the history and the connections that you have in your region. It doesn't necessarily have to be your connections, though. It could be your contractors or your community college or your economic developers. You want to definitely use your network. So in the Mahoning Valley area around Youngstown, one manufacturer recognized workforce as the single issue impacting his business, met with his competitors, workforce got involved, and 2.5 years later, there are 105 members of their manufacturing coalition. So a couple other data points to consider if you need a tiebreaker. You want to look at wages, industries that pay family-sustaining wages, and you can look at economic impact. Every industry has a jobs multiplier, so you can roughly estimate what might be the impact of your efforts. So, to look at your next target industry, you want to look at employment size and trends, competitive advantages, you want to look at job postings and real-time labor market information, and look at your connections to find those employers who might be excited about what you're doing. So I know a lot of you may feel like this when consultants start talking about data, but I hope the last few minutes have given you a better idea of how you can make data work for you as your workforce area makes strategic target industry decisions. Thanks for having me.